It is Friday, December 24th. Let's talk PlayStation. Hello everyone, welcome back. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas Eve if you celebrate. And as we were expecting, it's definitely slowing down when it comes to game news, but still, we've got some things here that I think are considered more exciting or optimistic. But first up, as always, the PS Plus reminder, the December games, make sure you grab them, get them done out of the way. January's coming up very soon, the New Year's coming up very soon, and this is one of the rare circumstances where we can talk about the PS Plus leak before it is confirmed, because almost always by the time we talk about this it's confirmed, but deallabs.com almost always every month puts out a PS Plus leak that is correct every single time, so they're usually very accurate. So if this is to be believed, then January PS Plus, we should be expecting Persona 5 Strikers on PS4, Dirt 5, PS5 and PS4, and also Deep Rock Galactic PS4 and PS5. So 2 PS5 benefits, or 3 PS4 in total. And, well, if this is true, which granted the source is a good one, then this is this is an excellent PS Plus month. For sure. January is going to start off really good. Persona 5 Strikers, I just bought that. Hadn't started it, but I'll always grab the digital version if it's free or super cheap. That works out great. Dirt 5 launched on PS5 and it was on PS4, November last year, and that's a really great arcade racer. Deep Rock Galactic launched 1 or 2 years ago on PC and Xbox, well received, and now it's making its debut on PlayStation, so that should be a day one, sort of a day and date PS Plus game, which does happen every so often. Hopefully this is true. It looks really good. And it bodes well for what we're expecting, and what I imagine most of us are laser focused on is that rumored PlayStation service sometime in the spring next year, codenamed Spartacus. Depending on how that service, turns out to be, depending on what it looks like, that's going to be an entirely different beast of a conversation, which we'll probably discuss that soon in the PlayStation Predictions 2022 video, which is probably next week or the week after, something like that, but we'll be talking about that relatively soon. Anyway, getting into our first story, which is also on the topic of PS Plus, but if you remember a few months back, which I don't recall what month it was exactly, but one of the benefits was Final Fantasy VII Remake, which is really cool, but the big caveat there was you could not get a free upgrade to the PS5 version. That was solely for people that paid money for the game in some way, whether it was disc or digital. They got a free upgrade, but there was still a fee to get the new Intermission Yuffie DLC. And turns out that if you did claim the PS Plus version, now there's a free upgrade. So it seems kind of random out of nowhere to have that, 4 or 5 month gap of claiming the game, and then if you waited long enough, you're now eligible for a free upgrade for what is basically just PS5 enhancements, so you're still not getting the Yuffie DLC, but if you do have the PS Plus version, you can upgrade for free, and now you can get the Intermission DLC, which was solely for the PS5 version, which currently that's also on sale, so that's probably Square's way of getting some more money out of people that were maybe holding out of actually buying FF7 Remake Intergrade, or buying the base PS4 copy, upgrading, and then paying for it that way. So either way, this is still nice to have, and what's funny is that an issue has cropped up amongst this upgrade process, and it's classic Sony and how PSN handles, or I should say mishandles, digital licenses, because what some people are running into is that if they use the PS4 disc to claim the free PS5 upgrade, which that is a digital copy of the game, but it requires a disc to prove that you own it, if you did that, you can no longer claim the PS Plus upgrade because PSN thinks that, hey, you already have a free upgrade, but you have the upgrade that requires a disc, so you can no longer remove the inconvenience of having to use the disc, because that's what some people understandably want to do, right? All the time I have tons of physical games, but if they come to PS Plus, I mean, why wouldn't I claim it so I can, play it digitally instead of having to use a disc? It's just kind of like, why wouldn't you do that? And so that's what's happening here, is that people can't claim the free upgrade because that's how PSN is seeing the license. And I'm seeing a lot of people argue about if this is Sony's fault or Square's fault. It's almost definitely Sony's fault, because this is how PSN handles licenses. In fact, that's why I said it's classic Sony, because over the years we've seen PSN evolve in a much better way, where before, I mean, it was so backwards, right? Because if you claimed a PS Plus game, you couldn't actually buy it. The second you claimed a PS Plus game, you just lost the option to buy it, even if you weren't a member. That's how it was at one point. And that's strange, right? There should be a way to override your license. And more so, I'm seeing some people actually post their success stories of reaching out to Sony support and asking, they're asking them to remove their license from the, like, take down my free upgrade, that way they can reclaim it as under the PS Plus version, right? That's how they're doing it, and that's how they're getting around it. So it's a pain. Obviously, it's not ideal. I would imagine that Sony, now being made aware of this, will probably do something on their back end to make sure that they're now accounting for this type of situation or circumstance if it comes up again. It's just the company not having foresight to think about this situation when it comes up. But I hope they get it straightened out. Moving on to our next story, we got another trailer for the Uncharted movie, and fair warning before I actually show it, I feel like it's one of those trailers where it's showing a little bit too much when it comes to different scenes, action, and set pieces. So just fair warning, but here it is. And well, for those reasons, that's why I think this trailer is better, because we can see a lot more going on here when it comes to this being just a really fun-filled, action-packed movie, which I still think that's what we're going to get. I don't think it'll be a bad movie in that respect, but it's just I still find it to be a tough sell when it comes to being a good Uncharted movie, right? It might be a good action movie, but not quite a good Uncharted movie. But there is a lot of cool stuff going on in there, like some of the more unique scenes and set pieces that are not found in the games, which you got to expect some of that's going to be in here. Of course, this is a origin story. So yeah, it looks better, but I will still reserve judgment until I see the movie myself. And probably a good time to segue here into our next news story, which is about the Ghost of Tsushima movie, which, remember, we're getting this as well sometime soonish. I mean, not really, probably years away still. In fact, what we're hearing is that there's still no finalized script, of course no cast, but the director, Chad Stahelski, best known for doing the John Wick films, did say that he's playing the game many times and that what they're working on so far, they're feeling good about it. And in a recent conversation with IGN is where he talked about how they want to get it right. In fact, he was quoted as saying, "You know how video game adaptations can go, so we're taking our time and doing it right. We're working very closely with the game developers to make sure we stick to what's great about it." Now that sounds great on the surface, especially if he is playing the game many times to get a feel for it. I mean, but in fairness, most directors or anybody you ask in the public space, they're going to be positive about the project that they're working on or working towards or pursuing. Like, that should go without saying. But I will say for Ghost of Tsushima, I feel like this property in particular has a really good, I don't know if path is the right way to phrase this, but a path to what would be a authentic and incredible samurai film, right? And maybe I'm just picturing other, amazing samurai films and going, oh, it can be that, but Ghost of Tsushima, based on the story of what happened on Tsushima Island, the Mongol invasion, Jin Sakai, just take that story and make a really authentic Japanese film, which probably is not quite what this is going to be. But when I look at other properties that PlayStation Productions is pursuing, we can see how Uncharted, maybe it'll be a good action film, but it might not be a good Uncharted movie. Twisted Metal is a TV show. It's like, okay, how is that gonna work? Again, it could be good in the genre it's exploring, but it might not be a good Twisted Metal adaptation, right? It's just, and if it falls on both of those areas, then you've got just a bad experience all around. At least for Ghost of Tsushima, I can say, or I at least feel like it has a unique opportunity to maybe be something really special. If that happens, that's far away. We can't really discuss that just yet. For our next story, let's talk about Deviation Games, the somewhat recently formed studio by Jason Blundell and Dave Anthony, formerly of the Call of Duty franchise. And also this team recently was signed on by PlayStation to do an exclusive project, so that's why we're certainly keeping our eyes on them. And this past week, Jason Blundell put out a 7-minute video addressing the community, talking about a number of small but I would say meaningful updates regarding what's going on at this team. And so right now, what we do know is that Deviation is over 100 employees, which pretty good. This is certainly going to be a large-scale game. He also mentions that the last year and a half or so, it was pre-production, and he also makes it a point to say that for pre-production, it was more of a full-scale pre-production versus what you normally see in game development, which might also go into 2022, because right now what he's saying is that next year will be full production. Now, initially when I thought, okay, full production next year, at a minimum, we're looking at, 3 years until we see this game, which is far away, and that's a minimum. It could be much longer in all likelihood. But the way he pointed out that their pre-production was a bit longer and It felt like a more full pre-production. Maybe he's implying that a lot of groundwork was really laid out and was accomplished during that time, so maybe it won't be 3 years until the game's done. I don't know. Obviously, it's still going to be very far away, so it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things, but he does like to bring up, and he's done this so many times before, but how deviation is a play on words, where it's like they're deviating away from the norms of game development, or not necessarily development, but the game that they're trying to create, the ideas that they're exploring, and how a lot of games nowadays all sort of blend together and feel very samey, and so they're trying to deviate away from that. Now, look, this is either and I hate to say, for lack of a better phrase, like a marketing ploy, because I'm sure everybody at Deviation's very enthusiastic about this project, but it's either like a a marketing ploy, or they truly have something that is very inventive and different and a creative take on whatever it is that they're really exploring, which Jason points out that they're trying to have a perfect marriage of game design and storytelling, and that's not easy to do, as we've seen throughout the past decade or so. I mean, really, storytelling has been in games for a very long time, but some of these more larger budget, full-scale productions that are trying to tell a meaningful story, which this also might go into why Sony wanted to sign them on, because this is a very unique idea and take on what it means to do gameplay and story being so tightly knit together. I don't know, there might be something really interesting here. It's one of those two things, right? Which I hope it's more in line with a brand new idea that we haven't really seen before. Those are hard to come by, but I suspect in 3-4 years we'll find out what it really is. Next up, Game Informer recently ran some exclusive coverage on Horizon Forbidden West, where we got some new screenshots, new details on the skill tree, upgrading weapons, a new look at one of the new machines, which is the Burrower. We saw that in the screenshot, where it's very similar to the Watcher from the first game, so it should be a fairly common enemy that you're going to be running into in what is supposed to be an introductory area, which is like a deserty biome or a deserty canyon type biome, and these do exactly what you think they do. They burrow, so that'll be pretty cool. We also see Aloy walking around another highly populated settlement, which we've seen some of these before at this point. A lot more going on here versus what we saw in Zero Dawn. That's great to see. The skill trees, though, we talked about this before as well, but there's a lot more. We're hearing that it's much larger than we think, right? Or that we thought previously. And that was, I guess, the one, not issue, but we see this a lot with certain action-adventure games where they have light RPG elements. I enjoy them, some people don't, but oftentimes you don't gain too much value from them when, there's just not really... The skill tree is pretty basic, and by the time you're done with one playthrough, just a few side quests and the main path, you can usually, max out a character no problem with one minimum playthrough, not that much playtime. Here in Forbidden West, there's a lot more. So there's these different classes, right? The Warrior, Trapper, Survivor, Infiltrator, the Hunter, the Machine Master, and each one of those different classes has like 20 to 30 skills each, and each one of those skills can have, you can invest more resources into each one to increase the effectiveness of it. So it sounds like there's a lot more resources required, and this is kind of what I was getting at before. It sounds like you can really fine-tune Aloy for a certain type of play style, right? And so it might not feel as samey. I feel like everybody can play Zero Dawn and largely accomplish the game in the same way, and that might not be the same case for Forbidden West, when you can really, spend more of your resources in 2 or 3 of these classes, or maybe balance her out, but she's not, she's more of a jack of all trades where she's not really a master at anything, right? It seems like there is a lot more RPG elements to make it feel like an RPG. Because again, Horizon is still mostly like an action-adventure game, if we're being honest. So there's a lot more going on here. And that's the same deal for the weapons, where you can upgrade them at workbenches, and each weapon can have like, I think 3 or 5 different advancements. Same with your armor, and depending on the armor you're wearing, that can advance your different skills to increase the effectiveness there. So it really feels like there's you can have a much more unique play style versus how somebody else might approach Aloy in that particular world. So I love the way this sounds so far, I really do. Not only is the world more populated, it feels more lively, but it seems like you have a lot more control over Aloy and how you want to approach the story and the quests, and that's what I'm really in for. Now, before we move on, we should also bring up the PlayStation Game Sizes Twitter account, because oftentimes we see a lot of interesting data getting pulled from PSN when it comes to, file sizes for games or betas coming up or games we never even heard about before, and they're discovered from this data getting pulled from PSN. And at least for Horizon, we can see that it might be somewhere in the neighborhood of 96 gigabytes. Now, that's not a final number. It could be more, it could be less, probably less. So maybe it will be like, 70, 80 gigabytes. But just keep in mind, the game is going to be more on the larger side, which I think isn't really all too surprising. But that's without a day one patch, also worth noting, which the game's probably going to have a day one patch of some kind. We can also see that the preload will begin February 11th. So yeah, just keep that in mind. It's probably going to be a large game. Moving on, we have an update on that very small but still very purposeful, weird, out-of-left field comment from Guillermo del Toro during the Game Awards, where he said, just randomly, oh yeah, Silent Hill, I hope they make another one of those. And he mentioned that right in between some trailers, and we all were kind of like, whoa, why did he say that? So at least he actually did comment on this, which he was on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast very recently, where he admitted that it was more or less teasing Konami in reference to how Konami canceled Silent Hills after the PT demo release. He says, and I quote, "It's just one of those things in my life that makes no sense. I kind of just wanted to tickle the ribs of Konami because I don't understand. That was so perfect. What we were going to do was so enthralling." So there you go. That's why he said that. It was very strange at the time, and I was like, whoa, why did he say that? So at least right now, that's why, that's the reason behind it. He also does say that he still feels that there's no future, or he doesn't see himself working in games anytime soon personally. So there's your update. Keep in mind, this doesn't mean there aren't any Silent Hill games being made. I don't want to beat a dead horse here, but the rumors, reports, different sources, and yeah, there's something definitely happening. It's just more a matter of like, oh, is it really, is Guillermo really involved? Which probably not, actually. I would assume that he's being truthful. Granted, if he was involved, he's not going to admit that publicly. Or perhaps that Tease really was, getting towards something. But I would imagine he's probably not involved in whatever Konami is doing right now with the IP, where one's with Bloober Team, one a prominent Japanese developer. I would imagine those two things are still happening, and he's just saying, no, it wasn't me. For our next story, I feel like we have enough time to bring this up because there's not really too much going on, but every year the PlayStation blog puts up this post where there's a bunch of, across various developers, they make these holiday-themed postcards, which, showcase some of your favorite franchises with this unique art that's holiday-themed, and I just thought these were really cool, so we would go through some of them because they're so nice and wholesome, and some of my favorite franchises are in there, and I'm sure you've got some favorites in there as well. These just look so cool, and I always love when we get unique art like this where they're either using some of their IP to congratulate another studio, which we've seen Sony do for their internal teams, or the holiday postcards. There's also Valentine's ones. I love these things. So whatever, we've got some extra time here. Let's take a look at them. I love these things. And of course, I'm all about that Jak and Daxter one for sure. Now, with all that said, it is time for Let's Talk Plus, the weekly Let's Talk PlayStation giveaway, where one of you can win a $10 PSN code. I would like to congratulate this viewer right here. I'll be contacting you very soon via email or Twitter, and if you would like to win a $10 PSN code, it's very easy. You can follow the link down below. We do this every single week on Let's Talk PlayStation. Supporting this channel a number of ways can gain you an entry, and I'll announce the winner next week because I'm trying to help pay for your games. Those are some of the stories that I want to talk about to you all from this past week, and our Tuesday video was GTA Online on PlayStation 3, the final days. The game just shut down, the online service, so that was my 1 or 2 days of gameplay where I tried to run into lobbies and talk to people and things like that, like the PS3 online videos. Unfortunately, no one was using a mic, but you can check out some of the weird things I ran into there. And then actually, I have a video coming up tomorrow on Christmas Day, which it's mostly intended for brand new PS5 owners. So admittedly, I don't think many of you watching this, if you are, you probably know all this stuff already, but it's mostly intended for new owner, PS5, right out of the box, setting it up, stand, transferring content, all that good stuff, things people should know, which if you're watching and you think that will be valuable to you, then, well, that's coming up tomorrow, so you can go check that out. But otherwise, there's still going to be a Tuesday video as well, and that's all I've got for you. We're almost ushering in a new year. Hope your friends, family, and yourself, you're all safe, doing well, happy, healthy, and play a lot of video games. That's the one thing you should be doing and still doing going into the next year. But that's it. That concludes this week's episode of Let's Talk PlayStation. I'm Ryan Benecki. Thank you all so much for talking with me. I'll see you all next Friday.